That's it. Chinese or Japan is ni hao and hao hao hen hao, which means hello, and then hao hao hen hao. When you ask how are you, they say fine by saying hao hao hen hao, good and fine or whatever that means. But ni hao and hao hao hen hao. That's the only two things I know. And of course, German's my strong suit when it comes to actual physical speaking languages like Guten Tag, wie geht's? Or Guten Abend. Guten Abend, wie geht's? So I know a little bit about that, like good night and stuff like that. But my strongest suit in any language, and believe this or not, and it's a language, is my ASL. My ASL. I'm doing it in the air just because my American Sign Language. I know a lot about that because, see, one of my good friends, DeMario, I always call him Mario for the game because it's just, his name was DeMario, and he is a cool guy. He's cool. He's not your typical person, but he's still pretty cool. And I hung out with him when I was at Liberty's doing ministry, even though, yes, I was still in my old lifestyle back then. Yes, I will say this for a fact. I was in my old lifestyle, but still ministering Jesus to them. But you know why? Because, yes, I was doing what I was doing, but Jesus still can use anything and anybody to get that word out there. So I was ministering to them at Liberty's, and I met DeMario. And as I met the guy, I'm like, okay, he doesn't speak my language and he barely understands me, so he wants me to write things down. I said, it'd be cool if I can actually learn to speak his language. So I just had to learn at least one thing, and I learned the words how, are, and you. So I learned how to say, how are you? So I waved at him because I figured that means something. And I said, how are you? And he looked at me and he goes, and he did something. And he moved his hand. He took his 5 fingers and he held them straight up so that they're not facing his face, but facing so that it's, it's hard to describe it on where his thumb basically would touch his chest. So he took his thumb and touched his chest, and he tapped his chest with his hand, and he shook it back and forth. And I'm like, wow, what does that mean? So I got on Google, and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And Google told me it means fine. And I said, wait a minute, that's cool. I said, and I knew how to spell words because I knew how to do the alphabet. So I said, and I spelled out the word fine in these finger spelling because I knew that part. I'd known that since I was a kid. And he shook his fist up and down. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's that? And then I looked up. I said, fist shaking up and down. And then Google also told me that means yes. And then I was just so excited I couldn't stop learning it. I haven't practiced and I haven't done it in a while, but come to find out, little did I know that when I finally got married, my wife's grandparents would be completely deaf. Completely deaf. And so they just were floored. Floored to hear, well, not hear, that's a bad way of saying it, but floored to know that I can speak their language. And they're floored, so hey, whatever it is, what it is. I told her grandma when I first met her, because she said that she was sorry that her hair was disheveled, because normally when you take your hands and you open them up like you're gonna go grab something, and you put them by your hair and you move it around, like you're washing it, that means your hair is disheveled. And so she kept saying her hair is disheveled, and I took my hand, take all your fingers, open them up, and you close them so each finger is touching your thumb. And then you put that on your chin, on the base of your chin, and as you move your hand around the face, you slowly open it, and then when you get to the top, you start slowly closing it back down to the chin again. So it's It's start at the chin. As you slowly open your hand, so all fingers are touching your thumb. You slowly, by the chin, you slowly open your hand as you move your hand around the face. Once you get to the forehead area, then you start closing your hand as you come back down to the face. And that means beautiful. And I kept taking and saying, no, you're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, it's a blessing that I learned sign language. It really, truly is. Me and my wife can speak through windows because she knows a little bit too. Me and my wife we can go to the gas station. I don't have to call her. I can just look out the window and say, do you want it? And she'll instantly tell me yes or no. And I can do things like that. And people are wondering what I'm doing, but it's sign language. I've learned that over the years, and let me get the Lord a clap offering on this note. Thank you, Lord, that you gave me the ability to learn sign language, even though, Lord, I haven't practiced in a while, but thank you for the ability to learn how to sign. In Jesus' name, amen. So it's a blessing. It truly is a blessing. But my strongest suit in language itself is my ASL, my American Sign Language. Now, my strongest suit for my actual language, speaking languages, is German. But ASL is one of my strongest suits. So, with that being said, it's a blessing that I learned it. Now I know how to use it a little bit. I still need to learn more. All the time I need to keep learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. So, with that being said, let's get into a few brief announcements, and I will send everyone out there a message in just a second. So, number one, go to communitycloud222@gmail.com, spelled COMMUNITYCLOUD 222@gmail.com. And guess what you can do there? Just guess. You give up? You can send me all of your prayer requests. Even if you just want me to shout out to you on the podcast, send me your first name, your city, and your state, and I'll shout out to you on TGIF, where Jesus does. TGIF, thank God it's forever, where Jesus does most definitely come first. I want you to let you know, too, that you guys can call me at 1-302-448-8443. Again, that's 1-302-448-TGIF, where Jesus does absolutely and most definitely do come first. Also, guys, keep in mind, and yes, we are doing it today. And let me say, keep in mind for Worship Saturdays. Now, this is not just Worship Saturdays, even though it is. This is not just another Saturday, which it is. This is also not just another TGIF episode, which it is. This is also not just me coming on to encourage you, which it is. Worship Saturdays is a phenomenon. Do phenomenon. Do phenomenon. Do phenomenon. Worship Saturdays, guys, is a phenomenon, and it's going to be a phenomenon each and every single week. So enjoy Worship Saturdays, and we do this every Saturday. And we're going to continue doing this every single Saturday until God, guess what, calls me home. Which I don't know for a fact, but which I think is not happening anytime soon. Because here's the thing. When you got something you need to do for God and God's not ready for you to go home yet, it ain't your time. So here's one way to tell whether or not I can't specifically say whether or not you're going to go home or not go home, because I don't know. God can call you anytime He wants to. But if you know that you still got a lot to do for God, then there you go. Then you know something's not happening at this moment exactly. Now I can't tell specifically, I can't tell specifically per se, but with that being said, let me just do this for a second. But with that being said, you know that if God's not ready for you, He's not ready for you. So therefore, God is not ready for me to go home yet. Not at all. Because I know that God's got a lot of stuff left in my lifetime to do so. And I got my Spreaker working back onto my phone again. It works, but all my sound effects all disappeared somewhere. So you can add sound effects to this thing, and I can add things and do things, and it's really, really, really cool app. If you guys want to know what this is, I might do a little tutorial on YouTube about what Spreaker is, and that way, if you guys want to get into some podcasting idea and do your own little show, feel free to. It's one of the greatest things that I've downloaded. There are other platforms out there. Like there's Lisbon, I think it's called Lisbon. There's also Anchor FM, which I'm not a fan of Anchor too much. Because when they distribute your podcast and stuff, like I said before, to different places, like when you go to Apple and stuff like that, they technically, it's under their account. It's not under your account. What happens with Spreaker is when you download or you ask Apple to have your show on to apple.com or Apple iTunes or whatever it is, Apple Podcast. When you have your show on Apple Podcast with Spreaker, you fill out the form with Spreaker.com, and then they send the form over to Apple with all of your information, including your RSS feed and everything about you, and they ship it over to Apple. Apple reviews that, and then Apple comes back and says, okay, here's what you need to do. Well, actually, with the new idea from Spreaker is you actually don't now sign up on your specific. You do sign up on the Spreaker.com still. You still sign up with them. But what you actually do is you give Apple your RSS feed. You fill out their form. You put in your RSS feed, what your show's about, all that fun stuff. Well, you give them your RSS feed basically. And then they review your show through the RSS feed through Spreaker.com. And then once they review the show through Spreaker.com and approve you of the approval for being on the Apple Podcast on Apple iTunes, then they send you an email saying that you've been successfully on there and that you'll be on there within a couple hours and you'll be able to view your show on Apple Podcast and all that stuff. And then what happens is Spreaker gets notified through the RSS feed that you're on there. So all you basically have to do is once they approve, you go into Spreaker and you just click on a button that says a toggle switch that basically lets you turn it on and off to whether or not you wanted to post to Apple or not. And you hit that on, and then once you hit that on, Spreaker will then know that your RSS feed is there already, and they'll start every time you do a show on Apple Podcast, it will be automatically posted. And it's good. It's great because now Spreaker doesn't own your content like Anchor FM does. See, when they post it, it's under their account, not under your account. That's the only problem. The only thing is you're under their account, and that's what I don't like. It's free. You can go as long as you want to. You can do as many hours as you want to. But then it's under their account. And also, it also says because I got a friend of mine, Lisa Fuller. You remember her. She's going to be on the show soon, too. And every time she posts it, she says, Lisa Fuller Ministries did a podcast on Spreaker.com. Or, no, Lisa Fuller Ministries